The modern day navigation is facilitated by sophisticated equipment, and these equipment are integrated into an electronic navigation system. So basically this makes the navigation comparatively quite easy task, because the information is just on fingertips. However, collisions do happen and present severe consequences. So we cannot ignore the risk of collision. So similar to the traffic rules on land, we have rules at sea to avoid collision, and that collision could be between vessels, other floating objects, and alright. So these collision avoidance rules are known as rules of the road, or ROR. Alright. The collision avoidance rules are known by various names, such as ROR, that is rules of the road, just now I have discussed; collision prevention, that is CP; or COLREGS, that is collision regulations. Quite surprised, actually these are to avoid collision; or IRPCS, that is international regulations for preventing collision at sea. So International Maritime Organization, IMO, has a convention on international regulations for preventing collisions at sea, 1972, and we abbreviate it as IRPC 1972. Well, this was adopted on 28th October 1972, and it was entered into force on 15 July 1977. Well, this is a convention, and it implies that this is an internationally agreed law. Well, there is no escape from these rules. So the convention means this is an internationally agreed law and it must be followed. And as I said, there is no escape from these rules. Everybody has to be responsible. We have this million-dollar question: why the ship collide? Why do the ships collide? Well, the most basic reason is when there are two ships at the same place and at the same time. As simple as that. So there will be collision. Now to elaborate it further, for example, this vessel is moving here on this triangle, on this edge like this, and this vessel is moving like this. So of course they are following a triangle, and at some point they are going to meet, and that is the point for collision. Okay. Now the length of the ship is, say for example, 200 meter, and the other ship also could be 200 or 300 meter. So this area, this point, it is not a point in usual physics. This could be less than a mile, or it could be 1 mile because of considering the bad weather condition. All right. So when the two ships are going to meet, the point of consideration could be as large as 1 mile. All right, considering the various circumstances and conditions. Say for example, there is bad weather and the ship is moving because of the bad weather, then you need to have some larger area. So If the bearing is constant, that means ships are following this triangle and the range is reducing, both the ships will follow the edge of the triangle and they are going to collide. So, as a collision avoidance rule, basically what we are trying to achieve is to break this collision triangle. Now, let's talk about basic structure of COLREGS. Well, the system of COLREGS has some rules, and there are 41 rules which are divided into 6 parts, and there are 4 annexes. So, just quickly let's go through the various parts. So, part A deals about general information, some definition, some rules like responsibility. Then the part B is quite important, which talks about steering and sailing rules between sailing vessels, between powered and vessels, and other types of vessels. Then part C deals with lights and shapes. So, the lights and shapes exhibited by vessels are given in this part. Then the part D deals with sound and light signal. It is quite obvious. Part E is a bit theoretical and talks about exemptions, what kind of vessels are exempted. And part F is a recently added part which deals with the verification of compliance with the provision of convention. Now, let's talk about annexes. So, Annex 1, yes, quite important. It talks about position and technical details of lights and shapes. Annex 2 talks about fishing vessel. Annex 3 talks about sound signals, and Annex 4 is about distress signals. So, let's start with the basic definition, and this definition is about vessel. So, what is a vessel? Well, any craft which is used or capable of being used as a means of transportation on water. So, that includes non-displacement craft, seaplanes, wing and ground. Anything which is used for water transport is considered vessel as per the definition of COLREGS. So, in COLREG, powered drive vessel is defined as any vessel propelled by machinery, and then there is a subset, say for example air cushion vessel, wing and ground craft, then powered drive vessel engaged in towing vessels or object being towed. Then there is something called CBD, that is constrained by a draft. This is the powered drive vessel which, because of a draft in relation to the available depth and width of navigable water, is severely restricted in her ability to deviate from the course she is following. Alright. Then we have sailing vessel. Well, these are the vessels which are described in COLREG. Then the fishing vessel. Fishing vessels are categorized in trawler and fishing vessel other than trawler. Then we have not under command. That not under command could be the vessel because of some exceptional circumstances. Say for example, rudder is broken, propeller is broken, okay, main engine is broken, or some steering failure, or vessel is dragging anchor, and maybe the sailing vessel, there is no wind, sailing vessel is becalmed, or because of exceptionally bad weather condition. So, this is a signal of not under command. Then there is something called RAM, that is vessel restricted in her ability to maneuver. And there is a subset of RAM. Then there is a RAM other than mine clearance, then dredger, or vessel in underwater operation, diving vessel. Then there is a category called towing plus ram, and there is a special category called mine clearance. Then we have vessel engaged on pilotage duty. All right. Now, before we embark our journey and understanding of the COLREG, we need to understand this basic term, whether underway or not underway. Well, if you are underway, you are not underway. Okay. So, not underway means if you are at anchor, you are made fast ashore or ground. And if you are not meeting this criteria, if you are not falling in this red circle, you are in the green circle, and that is underway. Basically, you are freely floating, and this underway can be of two types. Either the vessel is making way or the vessel is stopped and simply drifting. So now let's focus on part B, that is steering and sailing rule. And this part B is having three sections: section 1, section 2, section 3. And if you realize, section 3 is restricted visibility. Section 3 is restricted visibility. Section 2 is when the vessels are in sight of one another. Section 2 when the vessels are in sight of one another. And section 3 when you are in restricted visibility. But here there is a section 1 where the rules are given for any condition of visibility. So here let me just do the marking. Here for restricted visibility, when you cannot see other vessel, that is rule 19. I think yeah, this one rule is good enough. Then inside of one another, we have a rule number 11 to rule number 18. We have all sorts of rules, whether overtaking or head-on or crossing or between sailing vessels or the responsibilities between other types of vessel. Everything falls inside of one another. The moment you can see other ship, different rules are applicable, and these rules are given in section 2. The moment there is restricted visibility and you cannot see other, that is the time you have section 3, and that is the time you have rule 19. However, there are some rules which are applicable in every condition of visibility. Say for example, lookout, then safe speed, then risk of collision, and then the action. So if you see, the rules are pretty gradual. First you see, then you proceed, then you determine where there is a risk of collision, and then you take action to avoid collision. Of course, later on rule number 9 and 10 were also added, which are related to narrow channel and traffic separation scheme. So just to summarize, section 1 plus section 2, these two sections are applicable when you are in sight of one another. Then section 1 and section 3, that is applicable when you are in restricted visibility. Let's go back here. So section 1 rule will be applicable in both the condition, whether you are inside of one another or whether you are in a restricted visibility. However, the rules of restricted visibility are different than the rules which are of section 2, which is inside of one another. You can have a look with this diagram, and then we are having a large circle which is part A, and in the part A you have this responsibility, which is very powerful rule. And this responsibility, it is a system of responsibility. Basically it tells you that you need to follow rules as well as precautions. So at any given time these rules will be applicable. that is part A rule, that is rule 2 responsibility, and then you need to determine whether you are falling in this circle or you are falling in this circle. Accordingly, the rules will be applicable, and section 1 rule will be applicable in both the scenario.